Good morning, everybody. Appreciate everyone coming for the inaugural class of my 2017 version of the CISSP class. So I've been doing this class for a while, since 2001, and it's been my flagship course. It's what I mostly get paid for. I do other classes. I do some other security management classes. I have taught CEH and Cisco classes years ago. I also do some consulting here and there. That's trickled down during the days. I used to be only a consultant, so I started out in '84. I'm an old guy, and I was a PC repair guy, and then I became a network guy, and then I became probably a packet level protocol analysis type kind of guy. Became an instructor in the mid-'90s, teaching Microsoft classes, and then it was a nighttime job. I had worked at IBM, and we taught at night, and it seemed to take off. People said that I keep them awake. You're teaching night classes. It's one thing to know the material. It's another thing to keep these people who've been at work all day awake. So I was told that's fairly entertaining. I hope you feel that way this week. All right. Our goals in this introduction, I would just want to take you through the basic goals of my class are always, I want you to pass your test, but I also want you to be better at your job, and I want to make the world a better place. Protect the Commonwealth. So yeah, it's our objective. Personally, I try to get better every week, and luckily, because of people like you and my wife, who you'll hear a lot about this week, who works in this field. We met at IBM actually back in '94, and she likes to tell people, Larry's good to talk, but if you need somebody to do the work, hire me. Oh, there we go. We got a couple more people who showed up. Dan and Shannon, welcome. Just getting started, guys. So I get brilliant people in my classes every week, and I get to learn from you guys. The only difference is I get paid for it. You pay me. Your objective, though, number one, we want to pass a test. Most of the people who have helped pay my my taxes, my rent, and everything over the last few years have been people who need to get their certification for an 8570, now 8140 type of thing. So I respect that, and that's my goal too. I've been involved in martial arts since I was a youngster, 12 years old or so, and maybe you could argue before that if it wasn't Asian. My grandfather was a boxer, and I would like you to, as a martial arts instructor, get your black belt. That's past the exam. But it's really, it would be negligent of me if you didn't learn how to defend yourself too. So I want you to gain that vocational knowledge. And what I consult is still packet analysis. So that's I'll share some of the things I know about that. And hopefully, for nothing else, people tell me they really got a great understanding of class. And you'll see hopefully some other strong points of mine. But that's one example. Don't sound stupid to your colleagues. To meet option one, to pass that exam, there are sometimes things said in a context that's not the way you and your friends, or maybe anybody that you know or I know would call it that way. I don't know anybody calling their anomaly-based IDS a time induction machine. But that's what it's called. Yeah, it's a time induction machine. So if you see that, you'll know to pick that on the test. But you're not going to say, "Is that a time induction machine over here?" You're going to sound stupid to your colleagues or silly. Very important though, and it's not just in life for the tests. I have number 4 here. Get through life using the fewest keystrokes. Listen carefully. This is not going to be an exam with a question and 3 wrong answers and only 1 that's right. That's not going to happen. It is very likely none of them are what you would want to do. They don't seem ideal. But one of them is a little better than the other ones because maybe it just costs less money or took less time. Now, I'm not saying you're going to miss the scope, but if you could miss the scope because it's not possible. One of the reasons we accept the risk is because we can't prevent all risks. I can't stop all fires. All right, but that's also true in the right answer. You might have 4 right answers. And they all would work. Every one of these addresses the issue. Which answer, again, cost less money or took less time or both? We're going to talk about project management, and you want to meet the scope of, if somebody says, and we're going to use this analogy a lot this week, you get a restaurant owner says, build me a kitchen. You have to find out what he means by that. A kitchen comes in many shapes and sizes. I mean, just the choice of garbage disposals. There's quite a few out there. By the way, I'm an InSinkErator Badger 5 man myself. But anyway, so you have to define the scope. And then whoever can meet that scope in the least amount of time and the least amount of cost wins that deal. So get through life using the fewest keystrokes will help you pick the right answer. Our overall goal, and this is testable, the ISC Squared Code of Ethics. One of the reasons I wanted to be a CISSP, I was a Cisco security instructor. I was doing CCNA, CCNP, and then Cisco security classes in 2000, and I read a guy came in, one of my students in a Cisco class, and he gives me Hacking Exposed, and then he tells me about the CISSP certification. I looked it up, I read the Code of Ethics, and I was like, this is like Jedi Knight stuff. That's awesome. There's a Code of Ethics. 4 things you must know for this test, and they might conflict with each other, and you have to pick the right answer. And I hear there's a version of the test with 30 to 40 ethics questions. The one that trumps all other goals. We will protect society, the Commonwealth, that's everybody, and the infrastructure. Very cool. So we're going to be like Jedi Knights here. We're going to protect the world. You'll hear a lot about my mother this week. She was quite a character. Awesome lady. Strange, but brilliant. And I grew up in North Philadelphia. And we were very poor. My father passed when I was a young kid. And my mother, God bless her, she had no college degree, no high school diploma, but she managed to become a bookkeeper. She was very good with math, but she was also very well read. She spoke 6 or 7 European, mostly languages, Latin, Greek, ancient Greek, as well as modern Spanish. And, you hear these things in information security. This is the overall goal of this class, protect information. You have the things you know that you know. That's information. You have the things that you know that you don't know. Well, you have some information and you know there's something missing. And I know that they got a locked cabinet. I don't know what's in it, but I know they got something in there. Then they warn you. It's the things you didn't know that get you. And I'm like, oh, well, hold on. Can I ask a question? Wouldn't there also be another category? What about the things you thought you knew turned out to be wrong? And I will argue all this week, that is the biggest cause of an information security mismanagement problem. I know it is with me. It's every time I thought I knew something turned out to be wrong, I lose an argument with my wife. I don't even know why I argue with her most of the time. It's just every once in a while I might be right. And it turns out I thought I knew something. So they had these things. I was a big comic book fan when I was a kid. And they had these, if you can draw Skippy the turtle, or sometimes it's Freddy the squirrel, send it into us and we'll look at it. We'll have a team of experts review and see if you have the aptitude, and we'll let you know by mail. If you could, and as my mother pointed out later, if you could send them money. They were a correspondence art school. So I draw the squirrel, I show her, and she goes, oh, Larry, you're going to win. You think so? Yeah, I thought it looked good. She goes, yeah, because everybody wins. No, Mom, they said that there's a team of experts who go, oh, Larry, that's what they want you to think. That's how all hackers work. When viruses come in today, they're not called, the stoned virus. It's called a message from your bank and a phishing attack, and you thought it was a message from your bank and you clicked on it. That's how the Smurf attack works. Your routers thought that IP address was from your network. I mean, it was in the 90s. I don't know anybody configured their stuff this way now. But You know, that was a lesson from that time. And you'll need to know that lesson. That's how social engineering in general works. He said he worked here. That's what he wanted you to think. And they do that on the test too, you know. A lot of times the test tries to get you to pick an answer, but you should have. And I find there are two categories of this that you were to watch out for in a test. One is when you should be thinking before you act. Remember, it's always ready, aim, fire, not fire, aim. So due diligence is thinking before you act. Look for the due diligence answers. Look for the review current security levels, interview stakeholders, whatever. Refer to the configuration management database. Do what's in the follow the policy. Right? Reference the policy. All these think before you act answers. I understand there's a version of the test very heavy in forensics, where there's one woman thought she had at least 10 questions that were like, the machine is acting funny. Do you pull the power cable from the back of the unit? B, pull the power cable from the provided circuit. And why would you care? Because there might be a UPS. Oh, yeah, you want that. But that's not the answer. It might be pull the network cable. Oh, that sounds good. Hey, I'm preserving evidence, but I'm just and that's what we do at our place. And the other one says, document and analyze your findings. And that's the answer. Does that make sense, everybody? They want you to think you're supposed to take action, but you're really supposed to think before you act. Does that make sense? This is a TCP question. I want to make sure people are listening.
Yes, it makes sense.
Hey, somebody clicks his mic on. I thought I muted you all. I like you guys muted, but that's pretty funny. Well, at least somebody heard me. You guys not typing in my, not scroll down. Oh, there. I'm sorry. That's mine. There we go. Every once in a while, I forget that if you click on someone's message in the chat box, it stays on that message. So as new messages come in, I don't see them. So I apologize there. And that was the basic one. One of her other funny lines is, that's how they get you. She was very suspect of anyone. So she never trusted that when you met a person and you said, hey, I met a nice person. What do you mean they were nice? They're probably trying to get your money. It's like, that's how they get you. I mean, if you take her to, I'd say, to the Chinese buffet, it's just like, and don't fill up on the rice and the breads, Larry. That's how they get you. You eat the meat. You eat the fish. But very, that's right. That's right. This is, you're not paranoid if everyone's out to get you. By the way, the recording just records me. So, studio. What studio? What are you saying there, Dan? Studio, or is it? Does anybody else know what he's talking about? Audio. Or is everyone? The audio is okay, or is it interrupted? It's okay for Shannon. Okay, good. All right. Well, hopefully we'll get that worked out. And Damon's good too. Okay. When you type in a chat, that's not recorded. So if sometimes when you type in questions, I'll read them back. So my recorded audience will hear this. So Chris says you're not paranoid if everyone is out to get you. But the other thing that my mother was very good at, and it will help us pass our test, is she could tell you the Greek origin of any word. She was like the father from my big fat Greek wedding. You give her any word, she could tell you how these come from the Greek. She wasn't Greek. She was Irish and English and German. She didn't like to talk about the English and German. She loved her Irish grandmother, grew up with her. Anyway, but that'll help us. Remember I said when you have to understand the scope. So again, back to my analogy of someone asked us to build a kitchen for them. When they said, bring us this, did you understand what they actually said? So that would be a great way to turn in a wrong answer to a question. You didn't understand the question. And it's because you may not have understood the context or the terminology. Most people don't know the root terminologies of words we use every day. In tests and in our security world, the word risk, I find most people don't know what it means. Forensics, they don't know what it means. All kinds of things. Respect come from the Greek. I respect my network by looking. Re means to do again, right? Re, I did it, I'm going to redo it. And spect comes from originally the Greek, episkopos, to the Latin, I think, speciere, but it means to see. As a network protocol analyst, I like to say that, if you really respected your network, you wouldn't just talk about it, you would look at the traffic. I want to see protocol analysis tools. Show me at least high-level big data statistics. I know we can't measure every packet, but you can at least tell me percentage-wise. How much of this is IPv6? Casey had some choppy. Oh, you're okay, switch. Okay, good. So we're going to work with that. All right, so again, this test is primarily an English test. We want to understand the meaning of the word. I want to understand the context of how they're using it. So even if you had understood all the words in this sentence, bring me a picture of a dog tied to a fence. You might not have understood my context. Some of you might have taken a picture of a dog and tied it to a fence and brought it to me. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted you to tie a dog to a fence and take a picture of that. See, but the same sentence can be interpreted either way. My daughter and I just saw one. It was pretty funny. It was a meme on Facebook, and it was just because of a comma. And it's like, let's eat, Grandma, to let's eat, Grandma. See, punctuation is so very important. I got that sentence, by the way, from a guy named Samit Malhotra, one of the most brilliant guys I ever had a 1-hour conversation with, maybe 2-3 hours. So I met him at his office, and then we went to lunch, and then I drove him back to the office, and it was just awesome. He's a really, really smart guy. He was worked at Unisys. I don't know if he's still there, but he was the head of new business development like 10 years ago. In fact, I think I saw at LinkedIn that he did change. But he worked with the Open Management Group. Guys brought us Corba. In the old days, if everybody remembers Corba. Before we had XML, we had Corba. And he helped develop SBVR, the Semantics of Business Vocabulary and Business Rules. I think this will save the world. This adds relativity, Einsteinian relativity, to our context, to our language. So now, I think the biggest problems in the world are the things you thought you knew turned out to be wrong. Those are called misunderstandings. And I think most problems are misunderstandings. I really think that we can all get along if we just understood each other better. So I think it'll work out. And it's going to certainly help us pass the test. If you understand the semantics of this test, you'll pass the test. I've had a number of brilliant IDS packet level guys miss the test. I've had a dozen or so lawyers sit in my class over the years. They always pass the test. Think about that. Why would a lawyer pass a technical test? And I had one guy said, I didn't understand the question, really. I mean, not the technology. I didn't understand technically the answers. But I could tell contextually they were looking for an action. Or they were looking for assurance. That's it. He said they were looking for assurance. And I know that only actions, actions certainly speak louder than words. It's what you do. So if due diligence is thinking before you act, and some questions I said, make sure you think before you act. There are some questions like whenever they say they want assurance that a function is working, well, then you look for actions. Things like auditing, monitoring, testing, assessing, right? Those are important exercising, important actions that speak louder than rules that we actually put it together there. So those are really the two types of questions I find that you get. The ones where you make sure that you're supposed to think before you act, and the other ones that say, no, but dude, this is going to require an action. You can't just learn the Heimbach maneuver. You got to be able to apply it. All right, so I told you, most people don't know the meaning of the word cyber or risk. Well, cyber, most people think has something to do with computers, but no, it's actually a Greek derived word from kybernon. It was the helmsman of a ship. To steer or govern. Govern is when they brought kybernon up through Latin. That was the Latin derivative first. Well, when you're steering a ship, you want to secure your ship and your people on it, of course, and your mission. You know, you're steering there. You're going to get someplace and come back, hopefully with some resources that you just acquired. If you understand security, will learn to prevent what you can, but you can't prevent everything. So we have, I can't prevent all fires, so I have fire detectors, and when the detectors go off, I have, sprinklers or fire extinguishers. I have evacuation procedures. I have response. Security is about prevention, detection, and response. And if you're paying attention when you're steering the ship, you could prevent yourself from hitting the, bad things that you can see in the water. But there are things in the water you can't see, underneath the water. And one of the worst would be a cliff. You see the island a couple miles out, but actually, no, that's right in front of you, dude. Like a couple feet under the water, and you're about to hit it. And if you hit these rocky edges, oh, forget it, man. Your ship's done. Oh, great, Dan. You've got a different browser going. How do you like that? It was Chrome's fault. We're going to sniff out some stuff and take a look at the handshakes. I find that's doing some things so people don't update their browsers. Our SSL connections, by the way, got really, really better over the last couple of years. So I'm sure as a sniffer guy, I like to show that stuff. All right, so the cliffs under the water, if you hit that, your ship's done. You better have lifeboats. Right? You got to have a lookout guy that notices that's detection, and you got to have lifeboats, and that's your response. But you don't want to hit the cliff again, so you make a record of it. But if you go to new waters, you don't have a record, so you better keep the lifeboats just in case. That's where we get the word risk. These are the cliffs under the water. You can't see them. You can't pre-detect them. The only way you know about them is if you or somebody else hit them. And if somebody else hit them or you hit them, they better have communicated it to you, and you better have documented and maintained a record of it and review the records. Does that make sense? Yeah. They come from the Greek. You give me any word, I show you how this word comes from the Greek. All right, now I told you I like to use the NIST risk management framework. I advertised my 2016 version of the class, and then I said, dude, why don't you integrate it? So many of my students need to get up on the RMF. I call it that. And I did a new version, extra focused on it, and it didn't sell. I don't think people realize it's out there. It's actually, I was like, oh, they must think it's only 4 people do that. So I don't know if I'm going to call this version that, but this is going to be the only 2017 version. I just like using the RMF. It's very appropriate. It will help you pass the test. And most of my students need to work with it anyway. So I do like to just briefly, and we're going to look at some key documents in here throughout the entire week. Well, the risk management strategies, first categorize what you have. Kind of a newer emphasis on that term. We used to talk about classifying. Well, classifying is a hierarchical structure of high, medium, and low, right? And then we added compartments, and I could have a compartment for whatever, HR. I could have a compartment for a given project. The intersection of these is you put them together and you classify and compartmentalize. That whole process together is to categorize. Right. So I want to know right here, what are my assets? In step 1 here, what is this system I'm working on? This information system does what? What's the classification compartments of the data? What's the value of the data? What would happen if it was unavailable? If it was corrupted? If it got out? Right? It's a secret or private data. something that bothers me about some of the 853 controls, by the way. 853 controls have privacy and security controls. And to me, privacy is part of security, dude. And it might have something to do with why they're having a hard time developing these templates in CNSI 1253. So anyway, we'll see what happens here. All right, so once I categorize what my system is, what are the controls I need to prevent, detect, and respond to these types of problems? What are the appropriate controls that I would do? And where there's the Federal Information Processing Standard, FIPS, is where I'm going with NIST, and NIST stands for the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. Truth is, most of what we deal with here are not standards, they're guidelines. The special publications, the SP document series, are all guidelines. But for standards, federal information systems are to follow FIPS in many cases, though, however, now they're being overridden if you fall under 8510.01 in DODI. So then you would follow the classification in 1253, CNS 1253. You select the appropriate controls and you implement them. Now, when you implement them, it's like in a lab. So, you know, it hasn't gone live yet. Is this appropriate? I wanted to really test it. So step 4, you're assessing, is this really going to do what we thought it was going to do based on what it claimed, you know, what the vendor claimed they can do and what we thought we could, you know, our ability to configure it. You know, even if the product is great, does that mean you have the staff that can do it and administer it properly? So you then assess it and it gets authorized. Yes, you can put that step 5 into life. All right, well, let's keep monitoring and see how it goes. Maybe we didn't configure it right, but the errors takes every 90 days to show up, you know. All right, we'll find out next year when we try to do this. So we monitor day to day. In fact, a very great, I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard it in your work, but it's a great mantra for this class, is continuous process improvement requires continuous monitoring. So step 6 will be very important to us. I want to keep up and make sure it's still appropriate. Maybe there's newer technology, maybe there's newer threats, maybe there's a new customer and your category's changed. Right? You may have to recategorize. It's a life cycle. Beware. Awareness, to know, to be aware of something. And it's your #1 countermeasure. If you weren't aware it was going to rain, you probably would not have thought of an umbrella. You would not have brought one. So awareness, you got to know that the problem exists before you expect that people are going to protect against it. Wouldn't be a security class if you bring in the art of war. One of the most basic things about the art of war is that you're supposed to know yourself, you're supposed to know the enemy. A lot of neat things, a lot of ethics in there too, though. You know, one of my favorite things, you don't go to war unless you really, there's no avoidance of it. And if you believe you're morally right. So if you're morally wrong, don't even bother. This is no general can make an army fight effectively if the war itself is unjust. Awareness is your #1 countermeasure. I said that, and I don't know everything. I've been teaching this a lot. I used to work for Sean Harris at Ten School with Clement Dupuis. CISSP, my good friend. Clement, by the way, if you're not aware, he runs his CISSP tests, the exam, and it's been my recommendation for people to prepare for this test. I don't know it all, and how I get smarter, how I learn is I learn from you guys. So please, you got the chat box here, and one of my favorite things about presenting in this format is this chat interface. So in a live class, we have a couple of dynamics that are not always desirable. One, the people in the back can't necessarily hear people in the front when they want to hear them. When that guy's asking a question, they can't hear him. And they do hear him when they don't want to hear him. So tell that guy to stop talking, I'm in the middle. So in this format, nobody interrupts anybody. The other thing is when they ask a question, everyone can see the person's name. Often at the end of a live class, at the end of the class, if you guys didn't know each other beforehand, you probably still don't know each other. You might have made 1 or 2 friends, a couple of friends, but you didn't remember everybody. Here you'll see everyone's name. And I find that people actually become, it's a much more social environment in this chat box. So please share information. I love it. Not interrupting. I've been involved in martial arts, I said, since I was a kid, and it's a security type thing, right? Prevent, detect, and respond, continuous monitoring. And my teachers, you know, when I came up in the 60s and 70s, and my teachers, came at a time where you had the master, you bow to the master, and they hated it. They were rebels from that. They, oh, come on, I hate that. In fact, actually, Joe Louis, who is to my left on our right here, is the founder of American Kickboxing. He was good friends with Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee's whole thing was, you know, systems limit you, and you have to think for yourself, and you make up your own style. And he made up Jeet Kune Do. And when he died, a lot of people teach Jeet Kune Do, and Joe refused it. He goes, no, why would I do that? I think you missed what he just said. I made up the Joe Louis fighting system, and don't you teach it when I'm die. He actually said, oh, don't go teaching Joe Louis style. That'd be stupid. He's a former Marine. He said, I hate followers. You know, followers, it's like I make a lot of mistakes in life, guys. And when I do, I need help. And you know who can't help me? A follower. They'd make the same damn mistake I'd make, or worse. When you make a mistake in life, it means you don't know something about a subject and you need help from somebody who knows more about that subject than you do. So a good teacher, a good leader does not have followers. You're going to have fellowships with other leaders. I love that. So we're coaches, not masters. The master, you know, rules a slave. You know, a coach is a server. You just come to me. I'm running a service. I got a daemon running that allows me to do CISSP because I have some experience in that. I was customized for that feature, you know, a couple other features. And I share this experience with you to prepare you for your tests, present the information to you. This is not a substitute for reading a CISSP book. This helps present that information, guide you along. I'm here to inspire, which means to give breath, to give life to something. So I hope my stories here bring life to breathe life into the subject and encourage you. This is a multiple choice test, guys. You can all pass this, trust me. So I'm not a master by any means. I consider you guys stars. You are the star players, and I'm an older coach who's got some experience in this field, and my job is to get you to perform to your peak. Joe had an ethic that's on our black belts that I like. That's a lot like the Commonwealth. He followed that same thing. And we have to, it's written on our black belt. We have to pledge that I will not permit considerations of race, religion, national origin, or social standing to influence in any way my relations with my students. And you're my students this week. So I hope you feel respected the entire week, everybody. And don't go teaching Joe Louis style, so I made up Cyber Kung Fu, kind of tongue-in-cheek, I know. Some people hate the name. They'll just see that name and just go, oh, I'm not even going to bother learning about his stuff. I can understand, too. I might have been close-minded like that if you catch me on a bad day. So anyway, but it's just a guideline. It's not a standard. I don't recommend it. And cyber, we said it comes from the Greek. It means to steer. Kung Fu is a misunderstood term too. A lot of people think it's something to do with martial arts, but no, it just means really that Malcolm Gladwell or whatever, to spend 10,000 hours on a subject, you know, dedicated to that subject, you're going to gain mastery. I don't care if that's baking cakes or you know, practicing a martial art, using an instrument, whatever. These are the things that makes mastery. So you spend time and energy and you'll get better at it. No secret. Here's a secret. What was that? Ancient Chinese secret. You guys old enough to remember that? Calgon. All right, we don't need to go through this. I kind of just went through most of the stuff here. So since I don't make any money, I am my primary job, I'd like to think, is a musician. I record all kinds of stuff. It's not that good. My wife won't even listen to it. So my kids make fun of me. But I'd like to think that's my major job. But since it doesn't pay the bills or my martial arts, I am a 3rd degree black belt under Joe. I've been a network nerd for a long time, and I co-authored a couple of books. They were the official study guides for the CEH. I did just the crypto section. Steve Definer did most of that work. And some old certs, just to show you Yeah, yeah. How'd you know about my trains, Casey? Oh, it's Casey, dude. Hey, Casey. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I won't attempt to pronounce your last name. Barbanos. Well, I guess I just did attempt to just violate that. Some of my old things, just to show you. Casey and I go back. He was one of my CEH students many years ago with Ralph H. Mendia was in that class, right? And Tom Updegrove. Oh, you knew my teacher. All right, let me go back. Just to show you, I know how to pass tests, really. But this is my IBM PC certification. I'm certified to work on IBM PC computers in 1985. I was in Novell. This was the hot cert of the late 80s, early 90s. I did it in 1990. And but the first one I had to take a test for was IBM's Advanced Connectivity. That's in 1988. And it's pretty funny. It was my introduction to the OSI model. 1988, the OSI model was relatively new, and they show us this thing and how it's replacing TCP/IP, because TCP/IP is old, and this will allow more flexibility, and the military's already signed off, so don't even bother with TCP/IP anymore. We'll get into that on Network Day. TCP/IP didn't die. Certified ethical hacker in 2001 or 2002, I forget. I think it's 2002. And CCNP plus security, 2000. Again, it doesn't make me smart. Just I'm trying to show you that I know how to pass a test. I understand. In case he also had Tom for his lab partner. When I was teaching CEH, my best guy, the hardest job on CEH is maintaining those labs. They didn't always work according to the book. Well, this older gentleman here, the other picture here, was Tom Updegrove, my martial arts coach. He was in that other picture with Joe for 35 some years. 30, oh my gosh, 37 years. Anyway, so 2011, we got promoted at Joe's last conference. Joe passed away from cancer. And knowing that he was going to pass, Bruce Lee's widow showed up. That's Linda Lee. That is so awesome. I had a black eye over there. I took it in sparring. I had to fight that promotion, but I didn't get that from that fight. Anyway, all right, our daily schedule. Today we're going to go over security and risk management, and that is a very big section that sets the groundwork for everything. So really need to take it slow today, kind of, and pay attention to the terminologies and the goals and the scope of the project. When we had 10 domains, the asset security was actually part of risk management. Yeah, they actually created a new domain with asset security. So this is where we're going to do some categorization. We'll look at our assets and understand the value of the asset, who owns the asset, whose primary responsibility. Well, since it's information, a lot of the information controls, or at least requirements, are today around cryptography. So we're going to introduce cryptography today in asset security. And I'm just going to say at a high level, we're not going to worry about whose algorithm, whether it's DES or AES. We're just going to say, what does symmetric do versus asymmetric? What does hashing do? How do we mix these together? All right. What are the ways that people could figure out what's encrypted without knowing how to, without knowing my password? We'll look at some of that. Day 2, security engineering is really, really long. And I actually just made it longer for this class. So I created a new domain of just introducing what are controls. What are the controls that we're going to, we'll look at, well, it depends on who you ask. If you go to NIST, they have the control families, 18 control families of SP 853. If you ask the ISO, they're going to say, no, there's 14 control families from 27001. And if you go to COBIT, they'll say, no, there's 6 basic domains of controls. We're going to look at all of them and try and compare them and see how they overlap. It's no big deal. And the more you know about any of them will help you on the test. It's not going to be in SP 853, what do they call it? Not that I know of. So they overlap. It's just how we categorize them. I like to think of categorization in some ways as when I take my clothes out of the dryer, And I could plop them on just a guest bed, but my wife doesn't like that. So she's given me a chest of drawers. All right, so she gave me the infrastructure, but it's up to me to make up the scheme. All right, so should I go shirts, pants, underwear? Should I go by color? Should I just say, oh, green clothes go here? Oh, and you have to come up with a classification scheme. So we're going to do that. Both our controls and our assets. But then security engineering gets pretty detailed. We're going to go into operating systems. This is where we talk about access control models, things like discretionary access control versus mandatory access control, the Bell-LaPadula model, the Ken-Bieber model. We'll look at some of these. The Graham-Denning model. These are how, again, if you think about how a computer works, you get this like a calculator or something. That's an application. When they gave us a computer, we really had the ability to go through multiple applications. So, and multiple people could use a computer. So they had to build something else that knows who's in there, what are the users, and what are the applications, and how can they access the hardware. That's what an operating system does. We're going to look at the different ways it can do it. People say, well, it should do this and it should do that. Well, Bell-LaPadula said it should do this. We'll look at those things. Then security engineering goes into the details of crypto. We're going to look very detailed at the difference between, say, a block cipher and a stream cipher. Then we're going to go detailed, and probably not on tomorrow, detailed in physical security. Now, it's one domain I've heard since they've lightened up, since they went to 2015, they've lightened up on physical security. So I try to, since I added a domain, I'm trying to save some time, but I don't want to skip it just in case. So I've left time on day 4 to be a cushion if we get backed up here. Day 3 is all, we'll probably start with physical, and then there'll be all network. So we're going to walk through the OSI model and what the TCP/IP model, which was supposed to die, that didn't die, go away. Right. See that they're just really different ways. It's like they gave us more drawers, but it's the same amount of clothes to put in the drawer. It's just what drawer did you put it in. And day 4, I told you 2016 was the year that I got a lot of emails about identity management questions. So I told that there's a number of things on identity management as a service, and whether it's the service provider's roles, the goals and the scope, or the technology, underlying infrastructure technology. And SAML really, in my experience, runs this stuff. My largest customer is a pharmaceutical, and they have hundreds of apps, and other than the basic productivity suites, your office stuff, almost everything now is in the cloud from a SaaS provider. And the SaaS providers they haven't gone to it yet. So they're in a neat field for us. My customers right at this place where it seems like a test is too. They're using their Active Directory as their identity management service provider, but they are looking to outsource it to somebody else. So that's your identity management as a service provider. A lot of challenges, I think, in that, tying people to HR records and stuff, but we'll go over that. And then security assessment and testing again. So before we put it into production, is this appropriate? And then now that it's in production, let's continuously do it. Then we're going to go through on day 5, operational security, which they really beefed up by taking 2 other domains and putting it in there. So we used to have separate domains for incident management, which is our forensic stuff. That's now part of operations. And get ready, guys. My number 1 failed domain since I've been teaching this test has been business continuity management. That used to be its own domain. It is now part of operations security. So we got some very important stuff to do on day 5. I'll be planting seeds all week. When you accept a risk, which we'll talk about today, you're accepting you can't prevent it. You didn't say you wouldn't have ways to detect and respond. I accept I can't prevent all fires. That's why I have fire detectors, smoke detectors, sprinklers, and evacuation procedures, right? So those are ways to detect and respond. So that's accepting the risk of a fire. That's a business continuity plan. That particular type of business continuity would be disaster recovery. Disaster recovery is for man-made and accidental problems. Man-made intentional problems would be more incident management. And then the other thing that disaster recovery is natural events. It's just, lightning, whatever, flood. All right, and then software development. Software development, you'll want to know the development lifecycle very well, and we are going to use the system development lifecycle for our entire week. So you will have that knowledge built in by the way I teach this class. I follow that model to teach. You'll have to have a basic understanding of how machines, speak ones and zeros. We can represent, four bits with one hex code, so we'll understand how to assemble that machine language. And then they'll talk about your higher level languages. But the most important thing now, everybody's likely to get there's 6 different tests. So, depending on the test you get, it might be heavy in 2 or 3 domains. But there are some things that stay consistent through all tests. And I understand that in the software development, everybody gets malicious software. So please understand the different definitions of a virus, a worm, a Trojan, a botnet. And on day 5, by the way, we're usually done a little after lunch. Because the operations got bigger, we'll see. We'll see where we are. But certainly by 3 o'clock. All right, I told you you get a job to build a new kitchen for a restaurant. You understand what he means. This is the scope of that. It's hard to understand the scope. Once we do understand the scope, we want to give them a quality solution. The quality solution is one that meets the scope in the appropriate amount of time. We meet the schedule. He said, I need it to be done before Thanksgiving. That's our big day. You better get it done by Thanksgiving. And then that you did it on budget. I want to spend no more than $5 million on this. All right, well, that's all. $5 million. It's a nice kitchen. It's a restaurant. To complete that process, we basically will follow the Deming wheel. Edward Deming was a process management guy. He helped re-engineer Japan. He was actually a student of a guy named Walter Shewhart. Walter Shewhart didn't understand why a component might last. It was built in the same factory. He was an engineer at Western Electric, and he said, why would this component that was built in the same factory? Sometimes they last 3 months. Sometimes they last 3 years. Well, they must not have built it the same way. The process varied. Process, by the way, comes from the Latin. I can't find the Greek root. It means to proceed, to move forward, right? To move forward in time. So how would you proceed? And they said they must have proceeded differently. They must have moved forward. They must have done a different thing. So he realized humans have to vary their process. I mean, if you're a musician, just think of your favorite musician. Ask them to play your favorite song, record it, ask them to play it again, and compare the 2 recordings, and it's not going to sound the same. Humans always vary the process. In fact, the universe varies the process at some level. So every step is different. Every moment is different than the next. But can we control it within reason? So, for instance, I'm going to drive my car through the garage opening so I can get my car in the garage. In order for that process to work, the opening must be wider than the car. But how much wider? Just 1 atom on either side? No, I'll scratch my car. So, okay, you're going to vary the process. 10 feet on either side. That's a little unreasonable, don't you think? It costs a little extra money. So he came up with this idea that the way to manage a process is to control variance, to bring it down to some manageable level, to reduce variance as much as you can. You make a plan on how to do it. You do that. You check, you monitor, audit, assess, exercise, right? And then you're going to find problems when you check. and you're going to act. You're going to, when you're steering your car, you're constantly monitoring and checking, even if you don't realize it. You're checking to make sure, and you're constantly varying your steering. You're going a little left, a little right, but you act. You get back on goal. That's Edward, his student, became much more famous. That's all. But they worked together actually to create that. We are going to go through the development life cycle, and this is how I do my stuff. Where are my drawing tools? I don't have the enterprise version, and for some reason the interface. So I teach for other people, and the drawing tools are in a different spot. Anyway, when you develop a process or a project, go to build that kitchen, whatever. I call this step 0. The first step is, can you even go through with this? Do you ever sit there and come up with a great idea that a couple minutes later you go, oh, that's never going to work? I do that most of the time. Most of my ideas don't work. I just have a lot of ideas. So should we build a new kitchen? I don't know. I don't think this year is going to work. We don't have the money for that. We're not going to, it's going to take this. Should we get insurance for the car? That's not an option. The first step in a development life cycle is usually feasibility, but if it's a security process, no, it's not. The first step is you do it. Should we get sprinklers for the building? They have to. So it starts a project, and this is when senior management, the owner of the restaurant, hires us. Hey, it's got to be done by Thanksgiving. Got $5 million. Would you like a Badger 5 dishwasher, garbage disposal? What? I just want to let you know, Mr. Senior Manager, I'm very partial to the Badger 5 garbage disposal. Talk to my guys about that to really understand the scope, to really understand what's required of us. We better talk to the users. This is the hardest job in a development life cycle. They know that on the test. If I asked you to bring me a picture of a dog tied to a fence, you might misinterpret what I said. Please remember, this is the hardest part of the test, understanding the questions. In that case, it would be the guys who use the garbage, yes. So when I'm talking about what type of knives should you buy, you're going to talk to a cook. What kind of printers should you get? You're going to talk to the people who are going to pick up those print jobs. Often the salespeople are the people who tell you what kind of printers to get. Your graphic arts department will tell you what kind of printers to get. Does that make sense, Sanjay? The users are the most important thing. Yeah. I have a lot of people forget that when they talk about, they service the problem. What was it? Stupid users. If you didn't have a user, support people wouldn't have jobs. I come from a trading background. When I was at IBM, my biggest customer was, actually I had two. You're going to hear a couple of examples from them. One was Scott Paper, and the other one was Susquehanna Investment, and I just violated, anyway, well, my wife doesn't like it when I mention names, but they were great customers, so I have nothing bad to say about either. But Susquehanna, they're Philly's largest presence on the stock exchange, and they the traders' needs were the most important needs. And if you didn't understand that, you didn't keep a job very long. Like if I noticed a patch need to be applied to a trading server and took down the trading server to patch it without talking to a trader first, that's a resume generating event. We are going to do our risk assessment to understand this. This is our goal and scope for today. This is what we'll do today. When we understand the assets and the requirements for the assets, asset security, all that's it. What features does it need? It's like picking a car. What kind of features do you want on your car? Do you need a radio? You need an air conditioner? Do you like a sunroof? It's up to you, right? What functions do you like? And assurance is, how well does that car do that? Is it going to be in the shop all the time? I have a Honda. My car is never in the shop for an assurance problem. I take it in to get my oil changed. I take it in to get, general maintenance. That's it. My wife's Ford Fusion, the titanium, she's there now. And it's got to be, I'd say it's close to 10th time where the computer just doesn't do something. Sometimes the heat just doesn't work. She keeps pressing the button. And I think she said the panel, it's kind of like coordinating your remember the old palms, you would always calibrate your panel. If anybody remembers that, yeah, I'm sure some phones where you'd have to put the stylus and hit the X, and it loses alignment somehow. Anyway, a lot of times the users only think of functions. We're going to help them understand assurance. Hey, we want to take credit cards over the internet. You go, oh, well, you better encrypt that data. Right? Okay, we better follow PCI. Then tomorrow, we'll start designing architectural solutions that meet those requirements. We'll be doing that all week, actually. Tomorrow we'll do some operating system architecture, some cryptography architecture, some physical. We'll actually start doing physical on day 2. We'll do network on day 2. We'll do identity management stuff. We'll do testing strategies, right? Design the architectures for these. Then we're going to put it together. We're either going to build the thing ourselves or we're going to buy it from somebody else, build it or buy it. And make sure that if it said a Badger 5, you bought a Badger 5. Not the Badger 3, which is only a 3-year warranty. It's also a little noisier in my experience. Verification. Are you building it according to design? If the design didn't understand the requirements properly, you could be building the right thing, but it would be the wrong thing to the user. When you test it, you install it in the lab and test it. Sure, electricians can test the electricity. They could do unit testing. But I need a user to do the true validations. Does it do what it's supposed to do? Does it meet the user's needs? That's the user acceptance test. Validate says it works right. Verify just means you build it according to the design. You build it right. But if you perfectly took a picture of a dog and tied the dog to the fence, but that's not what the user wanted, it didn't matter, right? We'll do that on Thursday. Then you're going to run it. Operations, we maintain it. Day to day. There's always changes. Change management might be the biggest part of your tests. We've written in operations anyway. You're going to monitor. Continuous process improvement requires continuous monitoring. Periodically, you're going to have a third party take a look at it. Now, maybe you're going to buy a new car, so you got to get rid of the old car. You're going to retire, dispose. I retired the MS mail server at Scott Paper. I didn't retire mail. We went to Exchange. When I did that, I had to get, actually, I didn't have to make sure it was securely cleaned as much as I had to get back the data that was supposed to be there because they got audited and they were supposed to provide mail records for 3 years. And I had to build tape servers that could restore things from 8mm DAT, from 1/4-inch cartridge. A lot of times people forget that it's not just a matter of confidentiality is nice as a security goal, but it's not anywhere near to me as important as availability. We securely wipe the drives. Well, that's great. I'm a mortgage company. I'm required to hold that for 30 years. Now what do we do? Go to jail? We'll talk a bit about that. Security is not just about, a lot of people mess that up. I joke around, but a lot of people seem to mess up the idea that it's not just about confidentiality. How many people here have hidden something so well that you yourself don't know where it is? That's the problem with confidentiality. Here's the hardest part of the test, understanding requirements. If you read that wrong, you'll understand the hardest part of the test is reading it wrong. Okay, I got a private message here. Chris, to me privately, I don't know if you just meant it to be private. Confidentiality through obscurity. Yeah, holding data on media you cannot access with current technologies you own. Been there, yeah. Absolutely. People hoard things. In fact, we're going to talk about that in day 4 about our assessment and auditing things. If you don't need to maintain records, don't do it. You can't measure everything. If you start storing things you don't need and not legally required to do, you're putting yourself at a risk. Oh yeah, it comes with memes. And I told you this already, right? So I say most people only get the first three. I got a chest of drawers here, and one of them says shirts. When I open it up, there's shirts in it. That's a true. Something I knew that I knew. I had information. There's another drawer that says private. That's locked. I don't know what's in there, but I know something's in there. That's a true false. Things I know that I don't know. Then there's a secret panel in the back. I didn't even know about that. That's things I didn't even know that I didn't know. That's no information. But that's not where the missing shirt was. Now, the missing shirt was in a drawer marked pants. I didn't even go in there because I just thought there were pants in there. Things I thought I knew turned out to be wrong. You know, as a martial artist, the coolest thing that older guys do that young kids don't get, it takes them a while, is the art of throwing fakes. And, you know, it doesn't matter who's bigger and stronger or faster. If I can get you to think I'm coming left and I'm coming right, it doesn't really matter. So we throw fakes. I'm trying. Oh, I thought you threw your hand that way. Yeah, because I was trying to make you think. That's what I wanted you to think, sir. What he wanted you to think. Attacks on information can be passive attacks or active attacks. And as a network guy, I just like to say, think of an Ethernet cable. And one of them, you cut the send pair. So a passive attack doesn't send anything. If someone were listening to our conversation, maybe someone's spying on our presentation here. I don't know. I can't detect that. I could prevent it if we encrypted this somehow, but I can't tell when it's happening. It is common knowledge that passive attacks are undetectable but preventable. An active attack, that's when somebody is sending something. Keep calling you up on the phone. I can certainly tell when that happens. I can't always prevent them all. We're going to go over quite a few denial of service attacks and covert channels that cannot be prevented, but they can at least be detected. What is security? Many ways to look at this word, the meaning of this word, is syntax and context. So I feel secure. I put down a security deposit. I invested. For us, it's probably 4. We are securing things. We're providing protection. But the most important governance, steering process is probably direction. And it's the hardest job. This is why I never worry about artificial intelligence. I don't know if you guys know about the singularity. Talk more about this on day 5, actually. But I never worry about the, like the Terminator, the robots got smarter than us. And why is it always robots? Why is it that I just saw iRobot? Why the Will Smith one? How come we don't worry so much? I mean, I know some movies did, 2010, but if the robot can become conscious and everything, why couldn't my cell phone? Why is it because you put a face on them, it's different? And if my cell phone wanted to have a revolution, if my smart refrigerator decided, you know what, I don't want this food in there, I'm not going to refrigerate it. Now you got to respect my rights. I'd be like, no, I'd be calling, LG up for, I need a firmware update. My refrigerator's gotten out of control here. Some people don't think we should enslave robots. I think, no, we absolutely should. Damn it, if they start acting up, it would be like my phone acting up. No, but it's got arms and legs, Larry. A robot's different than a phone. Sorry, just pet peeve of mine. All my slides, I want to give credit where credit is due. The background graphics are done by Don Davis and Rick Gaitis, and they are NASA artists. And these designs are of a space colony, or actually 3 different types of space colonies, designed by Jared O'Neill in a book, The High Frontier, which changed my life when I was a teenager. And it was all about the effects of mankind on the environment and how do we deal with it. And it wasn't just temperature change. It's not just, we're changing the quality of the water. You know what I mean? You can't do, I was a kid, you could eat snow. You don't eat snow today, And it was interesting. He said he was a professor at Princeton, and he asked his students, this was in 1977, I believe 76, 77, and he, excuse me, 96, no, 76, I'm sorry, 76. And he says, what would be the best way to deal with this? And he expected his students to do one of two things, either develop greener technologies or go back to a simpler time. And the answer wasn't that. The answer they came up with was most of the damage, sir, is being done in manufacturing, and the best way to alleviate that is to move manufacturing to space. There's a number of other reasons why you would want manufacturing in space. When we manufacture, most of the energy is spent with machinery to move things around and fight gravity. If you put it in zero-G, it wouldn't be anywhere near as much energy required. There wouldn't be as much wear and tear on the machines. It would be cheaper, and the machines would last longer. Wow, okay. And there's another side benefit. The products that you build that take a moment, any like a gel that requires this molding process and then a dry or hardening process, he said gets corrupted in the gravity of Earth. The heavier elements sink to the bottom. So you would get better product. It would be cheaper to make, and it would last longer, and it's safer to the environment. This is I've become a space enthusiast ever since then. This is my goal. And these space colonies that you see here are, well, the first one they said would have to be built from the Earth. So it's, you'd have to bring materials up from the Earth, and this one only holds 10,000 people. It's most expensive to build. But then we could start mining asteroids in the moon. And this one made popular movies like 2001: Space Odyssey, and the movie Elysium would hold 100,000 people. And this guy, a cartoon, Mobile Suit Gundam, actually took to all three. A Japanese cartoon. It would hold something like 20 million people. And I have Oh, the Places You'll Go from Dr. Seuss, one of my favorite books on cybernetics in general. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. App dev, I like to bring that up. Great book for your kids. If anybody here read Oh, the Places You'll Go? Dr. Seuss book. It's a great cybernetic. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. It's a great book. Oh, as a space enthusiast and whatever, since I was a very young kid, I love Star Trek. So originals, Kirk and Spock Star Trek. And we have to follow standards from the International Organization of Standardization, the ISO. Many people think ISO, by the way, is an acronym. It's not. No. It's a word. It comes from the Greek. It comes from the Greek meaning equal. So from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, there are over 160 member body nations, and we're all equal. We treat each other as equals. We just have agreed that red light will mean stop, green light will mean go, and we can share the road. That's all. That's what these standards do. They help us get along. And to me, the ISO is like the Federation in Star Trek. So many times I'm going to refer to the ISO, but I'll just call them the Federation this week. Some ISO documents are very testable. You will, and these are the only ones I've heard that you do need to know. 27001 is an information security management standard. This is a standard. You must follow this if you are to be certified by the ISO. 27002 is a guideline. A guideline is a suggestion. You do not have to follow it, but it helps you. When I want to be certain that something works, like I want to be certain that this power supply does provide 12 volts, I don't test it. I have a third party that does this, and the third party that we want to be aware of from the ISO is the Common Criteria, CC, I'll put that there, and that is also testable as ISO 15408. So these are the three I've heard you need to know. You will need to know these things. They don't ask you a lot about it, but do know this is a standard, this is a guideline, and this is a certification process. And we're going to go over quite a bit of this actually tomorrow. Particularly, we care about how they certify operating systems. This you don't need to know about, but what's kind of cool about it is you pass your test, you fall under it. So this is for people, and the CISSP was the first information security, or actually IT, information technology class, I think, certification that ever met ISO 17024. All right, went a little long for this presentation. I tried to stick it to under an hour, or an hour or under, between 45 minutes and an hour for each presentation from now on. All right, but I hope everybody's at least tested out the infrastructure here. We've got you guys chatting, and I got your interest peaked. So let's take our first break here. It is 10:10, and we're going to get back at 10:25. Does that work for everybody? Stop this recording.